to start learning how to use the graphing calculator, and we'll do that using our new trig equations that we're learning about. I made a note sheet to help guide you in the steps on the calculator. So we're going to begin by checking our mode. Hit the mode button on your calculator and make sure radian is highlighted. We want to be in radian mode when we work with trigonometry functions. So y equals is usually where you want to start because you're going to enter in your equations here. Notice how there's several spots we could put equations in there. Arrow to the right of the equal sign and type in sine and x, and you can close the parentheses. Right above the 9 is the close parentheses button. You can hit enter, and that takes you down to y sub 2. Type in square root of 3 over 2. The square root feature is above the x squared button. To get to it, I'm going to use this blue secant button. Secant x squared to get the square root. I'm going to put a 3 in there. I'm still under the square root, but I need to get out of the square root, so I'm going to arrow to the right, and that got me out of the square root, and hit divided by 2. So that's how you enter fractions into this calculator. You use the division button. Hit enter. You can use the window button to set up the graph and what you want the x and y axis to look like. So hit window. We're going to arrow down once and set up our x min. Let's make our x min equal to 0. Then hit enter. X max is going to be 2 pi. The pi symbol is above the caret symbol over here on the right. So first, though, I'm going to type 2, and then to get that pi, I'm going to have to hit the second button, caret symbol. So you can see 2 pi there, but when I hit enter to keep moving down, it'll change it into its decimal form. X scale tells you how often you want to put a tick mark. So we're going to choose pi over 4 as our x scale. So I'll be using this pi again. So second, caret symbol, and then hit divided by 4. So you get a tick mark every pi over 4. The y minimum set to -2. Make sure you hit the negative button. It's at the bottom of the keypad. The minus on the right is different, and you might notice the minus comes up as a longer dash than the negative symbol. Hit enter, and then +2 will be our y max. And the scale is 1 already, and that's what we want. So there'll be a tick mark every 1 unit going up and down the y-axis. Once you set up your window, you can just hit the graph button and see what it looks like. You should recognize the sine graph coming out here. And then we told the calculator to just graph a value, y equals √3 over 2. So that's a horizontal line. It's finding where these two graphs intersect. And it looks like it's happening in 2 places. So starting in step 6, I'm going to hit the second button followed by the trace button. So that gets us to the calc menu. Notice how there's a menu above the word trace. So hit second, trace, which actually takes us to a calculate menu. And option 5 is to find an intersection. So you can arrow down to the 5 and hit enter, or you could just hit the number 5 and it'll go right to the command to find an intersection. When you hit enter and you're ready to find the intersection, the calculator is trying to talk to you here. It's automatically jumping the cursor to the first curve. So at the top of the screen, you can see y sub 1 equals sine x. It jumped onto the first function we entered into the y equals menu a moment ago. So see the cursor flashing there? They're asking us, is this one of the curves you want to find the intersection of? And it is. So hit the enter button. Notice how the flashing cursor jumped to the other curve now. So on my calculator, it's red, and it's flashing on the red line, or y sub 2. You could see it at the top. Y sub 2 equals √3 over 2. And it's asking me, is this the second curve you want to find the intersection of? So hit enter. There could be more than 2 curves on your graph, so that's why it has this option for you to choose. Now the fun part. They want you now to give them a guess. And what I'd like to do is scooch this all the way over to this first intersection on the left. And I have a reason for that this time. Normally you could just go to the closest one, but I'm asking you to go all the way to the left. Put the flashing cursor, notice I'm using the left button. Put the flashing cursor very close to the intersection. It does not have to be right on top of it. If it's close by, it'll still work. And hit enter. Now you have the intersection. It's being shown to us right there. 1.047 is our x-coordinate of that intersection, and 0.866 is the y-coordinate. The x-coordinate is what we're going to be looking for in our homework questions, and that the x-coordinate is 1.047. So that's our x-coordinate, and I rounded it, so that's why I use the about symbol. And then I want to talk for a moment about what that means. We just put in the calculator sine x. And then we also put the square root of 3 over 2. Well, when you find the intersection, it's like you're trying to find out where these two functions are equal to each other. So you're trying to solve this equation when you do this intersection method. Look at the equation I just wrote. Sine x equals root 3 over 2. You actually know the answer to that. We are on the interval from 0 to 2 pi. How many times does sine equal root 3 over 2 on the interval from 0 to 2 pi, on one wrap around the unit circle? There are two places. There's a spot in the first quadrant, and there's a spot in the second quadrant. So in the first quadrant, sine x equals root 3 over 2 at pi over 3. Now, for a moment, let's look at what pi over 3 is as a decimal. So to get out of the graph screen, you want to quit. See the word quit above the mode button? But it's in blue, so I'm going to hit second mode to quit out of that screen, and I'm back at this screen that's blank. It's called the home screen, and I'm going to type in pi divided by 3. So pi is right here, so I'm going to hit second caret symbol to get pi, divided by 3, enter, and there's the very same decimal, 1.047. So when you put the left side of the equation in y1 and the right side of the equation in y2, and you find their intersection, the x-coordinate is actually the solution to that equation. Now that's just one solution. We need to find the other one now. That's not on our note sheet, so we're going to repeat the steps to find the other x-coordinate. Now, before I do you know what the other answer is? When's the other time that sine x is root 3 over 2? It's in the second quadrant, and it's 2 pi over 3. So if I type in 2 pi over 3, it gives me 2.094 about. So let's see if our answer, when we do the graph, matches that answer. So we're going to hit graph, and you could see the picture again, and all the other work has been cleared off. Now I'm going to go back and repeat the steps. So I'm going to go back to step 6 in the directions if you need to know where I'm at. I'm going to repeat from step 6. I'm going to hit second, trace, and I'm going to choose 5. So I'm just going to hit the 5 button this time so you can see it goes straight back to the graph. Now the calculator's starting to talk to you. Is this your first curve? I'm going to move off the intersection a little bit. Can you tell that it's on the first curve, the y1 curve? Hit enter to say yes, that's the first curve. Now the cursor jumped to the second curve. Hit enter to say yes. So you'd hit enter, enter, and now you need to scooch to the intersection you're interested in and hit enter. So you're going to hit enter, enter, scooch, enter, and that'll get you the intersection. So what does that say? Does that say 2.094? Haha, 2.094. So those are your answers for the solution to that equation on the interval from 0 to 2 pi. So we have to be specific. We have to give you the actual intervals we want you to look, because you know sine can equal root 3 over 2 at many places. Many places coterminal with these two angles. Okay, let's practice a couple more times. When you go to practice another problem, you want to clear out y1 and y2. So hit y equals. The cursor is blinking on the equal sign, so arrow to the right and clear. The first example I have is tangent x, so tangent x, and you can close the parentheses and hit enter. And now we're just going to put a 1 in there, but you have to clear this out. So hit clear and a 1 and hit enter. And the interval I want you to look on is different now. It goes from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So go to window, hit enter to get to x minimum. So your x minimum is negative pi over 2. Remember to use the negative button at the bottom of the calculator. Pi divided by 2. Okay, you can see it there, but when you hit enter, it's going to replace it with the decimal equivalent. X max is going to be pi divided by 2. Y minimum and y maximum to negative 2 and positive 2. That should be okay. So hit graph. Wait for your tangent. Here comes your tangent function. And here comes your y equals 1 function, a constant function. This time there's only one point of intersection, where we would start at step 6 in the notes. So you're going to hit second, calc 5. Notice how the flashing cursor is on the first function, so hit enter, then hit enter, scooch to the intersection, and hit enter. Intersection is happening is at 0.785. Want to show you how to enter reciprocal functions into the calculator. So a new problem, we're going to go to y equals. We're going to clear this out. You have to arrow to the right once and hit clear. Since secant is the reciprocal of cosine, that's exactly how I will enter it. 1 divided by cosine. And put an x there and close the parentheses. So 1 divided by cosine x is the same as secant x, because there's no secant button or cosecant or cotangent. Hit enter, clear out that 1, and let's enter negative 2. So that'll be our constant function. Hit enter. Let's set up the window. It looks like I chose 0 to pi. So x min is 0. X max is pi. I'm going to change the scale this time to pi over 3. Second, pi divided by 3. So there's pi over 3. And then y minimum, negative 3, and leave y maximum at positive 2. So hit graph. We have one intersection. Hit second, trace. I don't see the flashing cursor. It generally ends up in the middle of the screen when you pull this up, but there's no graph in the middle of the screen, so I'm going to arrow to the right. You can see where it is. They're showing you the location of your cursor at the bottom of the screen. So there it is. Okay, it showed up, and it's close to the intersection, so this is nice. I'm going to hit enter, enter, scooch over a little, enter. And there's our intersection. So the answer to this one reminds you what this means. This math problem is actually asking you to solve the equation that tangent x equals 1 between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. And this is something I could ask you to do by hand. When is tangent equal to 1 on that interval? Well, 1 is a positive number, so that's in the first quadrant. And x equals pi over 4 is where tangent equals 1. I'm going to hit second, quit on the calculator, and type in pi divided by 4. You'll see that's the same as the answer we got when we found the intersection on the graph. Similarly, the second question is asking you to solve for secant equals negative 2. That's the same as cosine equals negative 1/2. And cosine equals negative 1/2 in the second quadrant at 2 pi over 3. So if I type in 2 pi divided by 3, that is confirming that my answer is correct.